This is Jean Marie Ward for BuzzyMultimedia.com, reporting from the 2011 Nebula Awards weekend in Washington, D.C. With me today is Chris Claremont, novelist, former editorial director for Marvel Comics, and the creator of many notable X-Men characters like Mystique and Sabretooth. He's also the author of a new short story in the Barsoom trilogy, have I got that right?
Anthology.
Barsoom Anthology, coming from Simon & Schuster when?
Next spring.
Next spring. Cool. 2012. Great. Although you written the short story, written a trilogy of science fiction novels, written a trilogy with George Lucas, continuing one of the characters in Willow, most people think of you in terms of comics. What brought you to the Nebula Awards weekend?
Well, I've been a member of SIFA for longer than I care to admit in public. The first story I ever sold was science fiction, and it very nearly got nominated for a Nebula right then and there. So,
what was the story?
Slamit. But so essentially, this is going back to the foundation, and my work in comics. The thing about comics is it eats up all your time, and I haven't been doing a lot of prose work other than occasional work for hire things here and there. And of late, my focus has been changing. I wrote the Barsoom story. I'm working on a novel, working on a second novel. And it was time to get back into a more active role.
Could you tell us a little bit about the novels you're working on?
I'm in the final, at this point, in final rewrites of my first novel in a while. It's a contemporary dark fantasy, young adult, set in New York, with a young character looking for her lost father and discovering far more than she bargained for.
Mm-hmm.
Mystery, intrigue, suspense, the occasional murder. Hopefully a lot of fun.
Okay.
And some steamy romance. As well, I'm working in first draft on an Arthurian dark fantasy, Wanderers, which is in the universe of the Black Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And it is dealing with a young page who is, much to his surprise, the heir to Excalibur. The only problem is Arthur wants it back.
That could be a real problem.
Well, it's hopefully an interesting twist on the legend as we know it. The beauty of it is that part of history in the first half, the middle of the first millennium, is a raucous and untextured time in European history. It's, from my way of looking at it, it's a period where the old beliefs, the old structures of fantasy and reality are giving way to the rise of Catholicism, Christianity. The collapse of Rome has splintered the entire continent in terms of political circumstances. The Vikings are about to unleash themselves on Western Europe. This is the sort of pause for breath before the birth of Islam. And oddly enough, on the far side of the world, in China, it was the largest expanse of the Chinese/Mongol Empire that had been seen to that date. It burst across the central Eurasian plain for about 40-50 years, and then vanished. I mean, it just receded back to the Great Wall. So, from a writer's perspective, this is a marvelous, rich tapestry.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm embarked on a story that encompasses it all.
Mm-hmm.
And fingers crossed, I think it'll be pretty darn good.
Young adult is the place to be these days.
Well, if you're going to grow an audience, it's more practical to start with a younger reader than
Mm-hmm.
with a mature reader.
And to a certain extent, you've been growing your audience for years through the comics.
Well, growing them and passing them on to the generations. That's the disconcerting thing I never anticipated when I started, that people who read my work when Dave Cockerman or John Byrne and I were working on the X-Men are now passing them on to their children, or in certain terrifying cases, very near to passing them on to their grandchildren.
Oh dear. Speaking, you've brought up we brought up the comics, and you're most associated with X-Men, as we said in the introduction. What involvement, if any, do you have in the upcoming X-Men film, X-Men First Class?
I think the same involvement that any writer of the source material has with the filmmaker, which is to say, that's nice.
Yeah, but you did get a cameo in the last one, or in the 2006 X-Men movie. Is Lawnmower Man going to make a reappearance?
Not in this one. If that's the province of the producers. And while I have great respect, and I've known Lauren Schuler Donner for quite a while, and I have the utmost respect for her, it's a totally different business and a totally different set of rules and parameters than prose. On the other hand, I was able to visit the set when they were filming in London last year, and it was a tremendous amount of fun. The cast was wonderful. The difference between the visualization of the scenes in a stage, on a sound stage, and how they appear on screen is breathtaking, in the sense that you're looking at, how are they going to do this? And then you see it and wow, you would know exactly how small, how scattered, how this and that scene really is. The difference when you're writing, when you're sitting at a screen and typing away, the sky's the limit. You can envision anything. I can describe planets blowing up, starships across the galaxy, Scott and Jean kissing 1,000 feet over the southwest. Putting it on screen, someone has to find a way to translate that into a reality that makes sense to the audience, which takes time, which takes finances, which takes technology. All I have to do is write it on paper and give it to Dave Cockerman. He could draw it.
Put all the work on Dave. That's the way to do it.
Or John.
Yeah.
But the point is that in comics, we do what film productions spend hundreds of millions of dollars to do with just the penciler, the writer, the inker, possibly, in our case, with Louise Simonson, the editor. 4 people, 5 people if you count the letterer, 6 if you count Glynis Wein, the colorist. We're there. It's done. In a film, you're talking hundreds of people working day in, day out for 160 days, putting all the pieces together, actors performing the roles, a screenwriter writing it, actors performing it, set decorators, special effects people, grips, infinite numbers combining together. So with us it's easy. With them, the trick is making what is intensely hard look easy. The final result is to create a reality that gathers up the audience, whether they're a film audience or a book audience, and just casts them into this world, these characters, this situation, and allows them to suspend their disbelief and enjoy the living daylights out of it. And I think in terms of what I've seen, and this is just trailers and such, First Class will probably do it.
Cool. That's great.